All right, it's time for the NFL draft breakdown and post draft analysis. I know it's been over a month since the draft, but I had school. So here we are. We're going to start with the AFC, specifically the AFC West and AFC East this week. And I'm going to go by the standings in each division. So we'll go worst to best, which gives us the Los Angeles Chargers. So, with the first, well, not with the first, but in the first round, with the sixth pick overall, the Los Angeles Chargers chose Justin Herbert, quarterback from Oregon. I like him. He had a good junior year. I liked him coming out of his junior year. Last year was okay, but I don't think he hurt his draft stock. Obviously, he was still the sixth overall pick, so he was still good there. He's got good size. In that regard, good athleticism. He can move around. He can run when he needs to run. He had 64% completion percentage with 10,541 yards and 95 to 23 touchdown interception ratio in his career at Oregon, so not bad. In my comparison, even though he's not as wide or as big, I would say Big Ben is a good comparison for Herbert. He is tall. He is 6'4", 6'5". He's up there. He takes shots downfield. He's not afraid to throw it. He can get away if he needs to get away, but I don't believe there's emphasis on running the ball over throwing it. And he's not afraid to really throw it out deep, and he doesn't really seem deterred when he throws an interception. He could still have a big game, and he could be pretty good coming up. So I would say areas of reasons concern why maybe he wasn't the best quarterback to take. He had a little bit of an easier schedule. I don't think the Pac-12 is up to standards with the rest of the Power 5, and they're not the only Power 5 division that isn't fully elite, but he had a little bit of an easier schedule. But that's really the biggest thing. And against Auburn, which was at the beginning of this last season, I don't know. He really didn't rise up to the occasion on opening week and really challenge one of their tougher opponents in the year. And then obviously they were upset against Arizona State, which was not good, and he did not have a good game in that one. And that led to them getting upset by Arizona State. And then he had Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl, and let's just say throwing the ball, not that good. It wasn't his best game. He did help the team prevail with 3 rushing touchdowns. But other than that, the offense was pretty stagnant, and the only reason they won, they got 28-27 over Wisconsin, was a fumble recovery for a touchdown. Saved Oregon from losing that game. So in those 3 games combined, he did have 66% completion percentage, but he had a 3-to-3 touchdown interception ratio in the air, and only 228 yards a game. So not great, but that's not horrible. So overall, I gave the pick a B plus. It's not an A for me because I don't know. I still think Fromm is not a bad option as a and you'll hear this throughout. But I think Fromm is a good option, and maybe Los Angeles didn't need to go quarterback first round. I wouldn't have picked Fromm in the first round. That's the beauty. He was pretty much slept on, so I don't know. Well, I think Herbert can pan out. It just depends. And yeah, the where they could have gone was defense. They're really not Los Angeles. They're not a good defensive team last year, and they really need help. They do have 3 weapons on the offense. Melvin Gordon was horrible. That was not good. So they could have used somebody from the backfield later on in the draft. I wouldn't pick a running back in the first round either. But overall, I gave it a B plus, and I think with the limited offseason, though, with the new quarterback, I would be hesitant to start him right away because you have Tyrod Taylor, or Tyrod Taylor, I'm not sure how to say his first name. But I do think if you rush him into it's not going to be good. I think the Chargers, I'm not saying you need to play Taylor the whole season and not play Herbert at all, but maybe because we don't know what the preseason is going to look like this year and they haven't been able to really use the facilities and prepare, so throwing him in week 1 might be a bit of a step. So hopefully the Chargers ease him into the process rather than rushing into that. And I think he could develop and be a very good quarterback in the NFL. So the Chargers had 2 first-round picks. In the second, with their second one, which was the 23rd pick overall, they picked Kenneth Murray, a linebacker out of Oklahoma. He's got good speed, sideline-to-sideline player, definitely, no doubt about that. He might lack the size needed. Strength-wise, it's not bad. He's no Ray Lewis, Patrick Willis at the strength, but he is not bad. It's more of the size. It's a little bit of a skinnier, slender, more frame. And I don't know if that's going to keep him from being dominant on the NFL level, but because he's got really good speed, he gets into the backfield. And he has been a little bit prone to using that speed a little bit too much, overcommitting on some tackles, and then he can get beat. And given the fact that the Chargers don't really have a bunch of linebacker depth, they got rid of Thomas Davis. So they really don't have much of linebacker. He's going to be asked to step in and play a pretty big role in that defense. So I only gave it a B. I don't know if that's going to be too much pressure on him. I don't know if he can handle that role, frankly, at the NFL level, especially not right away. And yeah, I'm just not completely sold on it. But he definitely has a lot of the intangibles, some athleticism, and I think he could be a good player, but I don't know about... Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be the piece that's going to turn that Chargers defense around completely, so we'll see. That's why I gave it a B. That's Kenneth Murray, linebacker out of Oklahoma. And the Chargers then did not have a pick for the second and third rounds. They did not have a pick again until the 4th round, which was the 112th pick. And with that pick, they took Joshua Kelly, running back from UCLA. It's a good pick because Melvin Gordon, not only did he have a horrible year last year, I believe he only has 1 year left on his contract. And Kelly, he's a solid running back. Good runner. He does have receiving skills, but they're limited. He really wasn't really asked of him. But I think, I don't think that's going to be something that he's not going to be able to do. Because he does have good hands. So I guess, after the catch, but I don't think he's going to have trouble with that. I think he'll be okay there. He did average over 100 yards a game and 25 touchdowns in his second year at UCLA. Or not in his second year, in his 2-year career at UCLA, my bad. He's not the most agile guy, but he's good guy. He's got good strength, good size, good awareness, and so I gave that one an A-, because, like I said, with the Melvin Gordon situation, I think with Austin Eckler kind of being the receiving back, I think Austin Eckler was pretty high up on the team in terms of receptions. So I think he'll be that guy, and I think Kelly will come in and take some of the rushing load, especially since I don't believe Gordon's got too much left. And then after Gordon leaves, I think it could be a good 1-2 punch with Kelly and Eckler back there. And I think it was a great pick. So then the Los Angeles Chargers had a 5th round pick, and with that pick they took Joe Reed. He is a wide receiver, a kick returner, and he's from the University of Virginia. That's my bad. Good stature, good strength. He's able to maintain his speed. It's not... did he run... I don't think it was faster than 4.5 speed. but it might be in there. I can't remember if it was in the 4.5s, 4.6, but he can maintain his speed, which is a good thing. He's got great vision upfield, which is why I think he was probably able to get his 5 kick return touchdowns at Virginia. And he's always looking to get the extra yard. He definitely fights for extra yards. It's a good thing to see. And with Keenan Allen obviously being the number 1 and Mike Williams being the number 2, I think he could become a solid number 3 wide receiver and then obviously take on the kick return duties. I think his bad habits were really like route running, and I think that's something that could be fixed. And he also really didn't have a good quarterback, so there were a lot of underthrown balls. And so another thing that he was criticized was like his ability to track the deep ball and then how he lets the defender come in. But I don't really think that was his fault. If you watch the highlights for him, it really wasn't him. The quarterbacks were pretty bad, and he's a good special teamer. So with the kick returning, so I think he's a good pick. I think not a loss is going to be asked from me. He'll probably fly under the radar because Chargers have Henry, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Eckler out of the backfield, Gordon. So I think he can kind of fly under the radar first year and then become a solid number 3. Good pick. I gave it an A. So moving on, the Chargers then had a 6th round pick, my bad, 186 overall. Alohi Gilman, safety, Notre Dame. If I remember correctly, he's not a ball hawk guy. He's also just okay talent-wise, but he brings good, from what I've read, he brings good energy to the defense, kind of sets the tone. He plays tough, tackles well, but kind of like Murray, kind of does tend to over-pursue sometimes. His coverage abilities are good. I think more zone. I think that's where he'll be used. I think he's a pretty good zone coverage. I don't think his man coverage, his man-to-man abilities, diagnosing routes, his abilities in that regard are okay. But better zone coverage guy. Like I said, he's not a ball hawk. He does have size, does have strength, definitely room to develop. And he matches up very well with tight ends, which is another thing that's good, especially the Chargers. They have to face Kelsey. Denver, they have 1-2 good tight ends. And the Raiders, obviously, with their tight end, they throw it to him a lot. So it could be a good pick. I don't know if he'll be starting. He'll be a starting guy right away, but is with a 6th-round pick to even get somebody with this kind of potential. It's a good pick. I gave it a B-, because I do think there is room to develop. So we'll see what happens to Alohi Gilman, and like I said, I gave that one a B-. So the Chargers then had the 7th round, 220th pick. They picked. And this one was a steal. I really can't even believe he was even still there. But K.J. Hill, wide receiver out of Ohio State. He, I believe, by the time he left Ohio State, he is the all-time leading catches receiver with 201 receptions in his career at Ohio State, which, like I said, is the school record. He's solid, very consistent, very reliable wide receiver. I gave it an A+. The fact that you could get somebody like this in the 7th round, I don't know if teams forgot about him or what happened, but I can't believe he was still there, and kudos for Los Angeles to picking him up. I believe he could definitely develop, and by the time you get there, I think he'd be a very solid number 2. Definitely a reliable guy. He reminds me of Anquan Bolden, kind of your guy. He's going to run his route. You throw it to him, he catches it. Not going to do great things after the catch, but He's definitely a reliable guy. Definitely get him the ball, no questions asked. So that was kind of my comparison there. So I thought, again, great pick. I gave it an A plus. It's just I can't believe he was still there. So I think, especially too, because he dipped that far. He's also really not an outspoken guy. So I think his first 2 years there, he could be like a silent assassin. Like it was just like Joe Reed. I think he could fall under the radar if teams are worrying about their other weapons, and he'll be there, throw it to him, and you can gain 15, 17, 18 yards without the other team even paying attention to him. So it was a good pick, and overall, in the entire draft, I gave the Chargers a B+. I feel like the Chargers did draft very well. It's very offensive based. They did really boost up their offense, which is good. They have a young quarterback. They got a lot of weapons for him. And it might become overpowering in a year or two. However, they did not really address their offensive and defensive line needs, which were heavy needs for them. And they kind of went probably to surround their future quarterback with weapons, and I'm not saying that's a bad strategy. The defense was bad, though. The defensive lines needed improvement. So to completely ignore those, they didn't have the most picks in the world, no second or third round picks, and that's understandable. So that's kind of why they got a B+ from me. Not quite enough to earn an A- or an A, but there you go. That is the Los Angeles Chargers. So moving next, we are going to go to I believe it was the Raiders, finished second to last in the AFC West. And let's see. Yes, the Las Vegas Raiders were second to last. And let's see what we have. Okay. The Raiders had the 12th pick in the first round, and believe me, it was a questionable pick. Derek Carr and the Las Vegas Raiders have struggled offensively, and I'm not surprised when you don't have one receiver that can get 50 catches. I believe Hunter Renfrow might have led receivers on the Raiders with total catches. That's a joke. They don't have a true number one threat. Heck, I don't even think they have a true number two threat. They have a slot in Renfrow. They have Darren Waller, the tight end. It's not enough. Derek Carr, despite what people think, I'm a Fresno State fan, and I do believe he is a good quarterback. But when you don't have any weapons, it could get frustrating, and he hasn't really played necessarily well since he got injured, but he does have high completion percentage, and I think the yards and touchdowns would improve if they got him some weapons, and I think they failed to do that with this first pick by going with Henry Ruggs, the third wide receiver out of Alabama. Now let me discuss why. He ran a 4.27 at 40-yard dash at the combine, so wow, blazing speed. However, he's 5'11", 188 pounds. And like, for example, which is what I think is going to become a common occurrence for him, when Alabama played LSU, it was pretty clear he was having trouble with the more physical coverage receivers. He did have 3 catches for 68 yards, I believe, but it was Judy and I'm blanking on the other guy's name, but the other one stayed. Devonta Smith. That's what it was. And Devonta Smith, he stayed at Alabama, so he's staying and playing his senior year. But Judy went to the draft, was available. Judy was available. CeeDee Lamb was available. Those are your more proven wideouts that I think might have been better picks. The Raiders need a number one. They need a wideout. And let's continue why I don't think Ruggs is going to be that guy. So I overall gave it a B- because when you have that kind of speed, you never know. But let's see. Yeah, so he ran a 4.27. So what I did was I looked at wide receivers since the combine started recording the 40s that ran 4.28 or faster. And let's see. So 7 wide receivers have done that. And okay, so first, the fastest one was John Ross. John Ross was the 9th overall pick in 2017. And he has, since he was drafted, missed 50% of the possible games that he could have played. And, I mean, that goes great with his 716 yards and 49 catches he's had since he was drafted. Phenomenal talent right there. Next up is Rondell Menendez, I don't know. And, I mean, who doesn't remember Rondell? Never played a true regular season or preseason or postseason game. He only played in the preseason before getting cut. He ran a 4.24, never played a game. Third on the list was Jerome Mathis. He was a stud in the NFL. I mean, he caught 6 catches in his 3-year NFL career. I mean, what a stud. However, while I'm making fun of him for not only having 6 catches in his career, he did make one Pro Bowl team because his rookie year he was a return man. He got 2 return touchdowns, but that was it for him. And that was the only reason he was in the league for 3 years. But eventually, even I believe he was on the Bears, and even they said it wasn't worth the spot anymore, and he was cut. And then fourth on the list in speed was Ruggs, so we'll see where he pans out. But we'll continue on to fifth on our list is the former Buffalo Bill, former San Francisco 49er, and now Philadelphia Eagle Marquise Goodwin. He has played 7 NFL seasons, making him, I believe, I want to say that's the most seasons of anybody else on this list. But he has missed 34% of possible games, and he has only started in 36% of the games that he has played in. So his average yardage a game has been 31 yards a game. Pretty dang dangerous. And he drops the ball, and they've only recorded this stat, but I would imagine it's been pretty consistent. He hasn't had the best hand, so he drops the ball about 8%. That was his stats as a Niner. And sometimes it just looks like, yeah, he's fast, but he just, wide receiver-wise, he can't really take over a game. You can hit him on the deep ball sometimes, but sometimes he's running so fast that he can't even catch the ball. So it was frustrating watching him play. And then next on the list, I believe this is the 6th person, is someone Raider Nation should know, or not. Jacoby Ford. He played 4 seasons, playing in only 60% of his games, starting in only 13 games. He caught only 57 catches for 848 yards in his NFL career. And finally, the last guy on our list was just released this last year. It won in what was his 5th season, but I believe it was early on in the season. He was released by the Raiders, and that man was J.J. Nelson, I believe. Yeah, okay, never mind. I didn't even write his name, but I believe it was J.J. Nelson, former Cardinal. Then he moved to the Raiders. And so when we look at that bunch, I wouldn't quite say history has shown us that these type of receivers, who, by the way, might I mention, were all under 6 feet tall. I wouldn't say they are quite the group. They don't pan out. I'm not saying that Ruggs is going to be a horrible wide receiver. I'm saying based off what history has given us, and the fact that I just didn't feel like he's going to be a guy that's going to dominate in the NFL. I don't think this was a solid pick. That's why I gave it a B-. Furthermore, I believe the Raiders, if I had been the Raiders, I would have drafted, well, one, and you'll start to learn this about me, but I would have drafted DK Metcalf last year. Every team slept on him. That was very stupid. But this year, I probably would have taken either Judy or CeeDee Lamb, both of which were available. Jerry Judy obviously landed up on division rival Denver Broncos, while CeeDee Lamb landed up on the Dallas Cowboys. Both are dynamic playmakers. They're both over 6 feet, and I think they would have helped out Derek Carr a little bit more than Ruggs will be able to. But again, I'm not saying Ruggs is going to be a complete bust. I'm just saying I don't think he's going to be able to make enough of the big plays that are going to take the stress off Carr and that Raiders offense. But it remains to be seen, so we'll see what he can do. The last thing on Ruggs is that compared to Judy and Smith at Alabama, he had, between the three, he had the least amount of catches and the least amount of yards. So that's another thing to point out. So he's kind of the worst of the three in that bunch. And I think that kind of just goes to his type of playing style. I mean, that's somebody Alabama, they would maybe do a handoff or throw it to him on like a screen, and because they're playing a bad opponent, he would just run 75 yards touchdown. Doesn't really happen in the NFL as much because you don't play teams like South Alabama, Furman, or whatever, Citadel. And I don't think he's going to be able to have that many opportunities to catch a pass and run 70 yards touchdown. But we'll see. We'll see. But moving on, the Las Vegas Raiders then, with their second first-round pick, which was the 19th overall pick, picked Damon Arnett, cornerback out of Ohio State. He plays hard, helps on the run, and he has good closing ability, and zone coverage ability is phenomenal. I gave it an A-, excuse me. When you have the size and IQ that he does, it helps a lot as a cornerback, and I believe he has the potential to fix his problems. I already mentioned his strengths, and I think give him time, but I think he can become a very complete corner in the NFL, and I think it was one of the better picks the Raiders had this whole draft, and it's definitely a need for this Raiders team is cornerback. And I think Arnett, confident, smart, a lot of size, and I think he could be very good for the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Raiders then did not have a second-round pick, but they did have a third-round pick, and with that they picked Lynn Bowden Jr. He was kind of like a wildcat quarterback at Kentucky, and I'm just going to go straight into the grade because I can't even... It was very frustrating to see this pick. I gave it a D, and yeah, like I mentioned, Bowden, he was a wildcat QB. I mean, they list him as a running back, but he's not really a wide receiver, and I think that's what it was listed as, running back, wide receiver, but he caught, I believe, that's not right. So he caught, I believe, 114 passes in his 3-year career. So not really the wide receiver there. He had 1 year where I guess you could call him a wide receiver. And I think this pick is a big gamble. His running style, if you were to use him at running back, he's not a traditional running back, because if you look at his highlights, his running ability is created out of the fact that he's playing from the Wildcat, and he's able to, break it and run for it. He's 5'11" again, so it's not even like it's they already drafted a 5'11" guy. They already have run for how many slot receivers can you have? So I don't think it's a need at all, and I think Gruden just saw this as a guy like, oh, look at this guy, and I could turn him into something good. And frankly, no, I just don't think it's going to happen. I've also read that Bowden can be a little bit quick-tempered and lacks some discipline. It was also reported that before Kentucky's bowl game, he got into a fight with their quarterback and did some damage to the quarterback's face. And the quarterback was not able to play in that game. That's not very good, not good attitude. And that could be a problem as well moving forward. So again, just it's a big gamble, and it's not like the Raiders have a stacked roster when you could take these gambles. They need talent, and they need talent now. And the only reason I didn't give this pick a complete F, because it dang near is, but Bowden is a good runner. He's good in the open field. He's got decent speed. He's also not a bad return man, which kind of gives me that he's good in the open field. So perhaps I could find him some way to get him the ball in the open field, but overall, I just don't think I don't think it's a need. I don't think it's worth the gamble for the Raiders at this point. But hey, they're in Las Vegas, and I guess Gruden is feeling lucky in this one. But I gave it a D. I'm not saying he's going to be horrible, but I just don't think it's what the Raiders should have done at this point. But that moves into their second, third round pick, which was the 81st overall pick, which immediately followed the 80th pick. And with that, they picked Bryan Edwards, wide receiver from South Carolina. What a pick. He's a 4-year player at South Carolina. He has the school record in reception yards, with 234 receptions and 3,045 reception yards, respectively. And he has 22 touchdowns, which ranks third in program history. He's got great height, great speed. At 6'3", 212 pounds. He's also got strength and some notable South Carolina wide receivers. So you can say, well, what is being first doing good for him? Yeah, it does. He ousted guys like Alshon Jeffrey, Sterling Sharp, Sidney Rice, Deebo Samuel, and Pharoh Cooper. So all good college athletes when they were out South Carolina, and he topped them all. He's got great playmaking ability, and given his height, given his speed, given his strength, I think this is a guy that Carr is going to like a lot. He makes some great catches, very focused when the ball is coming his way. I gave it an A+. Edwards, simply, I think he has everything you would want in a wide receiver. It's all there. Especially a number one wideout, and I think potentially Carr's going to have a good relationship with him. I think he'll get to know him well, and I think he'll use him. He's going to start to become one of his favorites on the field, I believe, and with that, I would say within maybe 2-3 years, he could be the Raiders' true number one wide receiver, and I think he's got great potential. I think one of the big things he has to fix is his route running, which it's like if that's your biggest weakness and you have all this other stuff, it'll work. So I think it's a great pick. I gave it an A+. Good job, Gruden, for finally getting somebody. So hopefully he pans out, and it'll work for them there. So the Raiders had another third-round pick, giving them the third-round pick of the draft, and with that they picked Tanner Muse, linebacker, safety from Clemson. For those of you that have been paying attention to the college football playoff the last 3-4 years, he's number 19. I gave it a D. I'm just going to go straight to the grade on this one. I gave it a D. Muse, I don't know, he's playing at Clemson. There's stacked players all around him. It's a third round. I don't know if Gruden forgot what round it was, but Muse was projected to be a 6th round pick. So he jumped the gun way too early. Muse does have good size and is obviously well disciplined since he is coming out of Clemson. Excuse me. And overall, Muse, coverage-wise, he's decent. He does have an eye for the ball. He seems to play very tight, which is not good, especially for running and diagnosing the run and getting into the backfield. However, he's got. Oh, wait a minute. Oh no, it's a weakness for him. He's also got bad agility, and his movement are both kind of below average, which is probably a problem because he does play tight. And I think it's a bit of a reach. Again, if he's projected 6, why are we taking him in the 3rd round? And really the coverage, I think he could be decent with coverage on tight ends. He does have 14 pass deflections and 7 interceptions in his 4 years at Clemson, so not bad. But I don't know how effective he could be. But given the potential, that's why it's not an F. The real reason it's a D, not necessarily because of the player, but because of how early he was taken. But I don't know if the Raiders had anybody else on their board at that point, or they just got excited and they wanted to take Muse. But that's what they did, and that takes us to their 4th round, 109th overall pick. John Simpson. He's a guard from Clemson, another Clemson player. I gave this one a B+. It's a good pick, 4th round. The Raiders have incognito for, I believe, 2 more years was the contract that was signed. So he can kind of learn from one of the NFL's best veterans at that position. Incognito is slowing down, so maybe he could fill the role, and he'll learn a few things from him, I'm sure. So, and Simpson isn't perfect. He does have a few weaknesses, which leads to some inconsistent play. He does have a penalty issue, but he has good size, good strength, that's what you need right there in terms of potential and development. He's got good upfield awareness, very good, so he could help Jacobs when they're running up. He's very good downfield and making blocks. Very good run blocker in that regard, and he has the ability to turn like a little crease into a huge gap. He'll just bulldoze over somebody, which is going to be good for Jacobs. And I think it was a good pick, which takes us to the Raiders' last pick. Was their 4th round, 139th overall pick, and that was Amik Robertson, cornerback, Louisiana Tech, and this man is a ball hawk. I gave it an A. I understand he's only 5 feet 8 inches tall, but I don't hate short people. I'm short myself, but I think he could be a great slot corner. And do not judge this man by his size. He's just a natural ball hawk. He had 14 interceptions and 34 pass deflections in his 3-year career at LA Tech. He plays smart. He plays confident. He plays like he's the leader, the beast on the defense. He plays strong for his size, too. He'll hit you hard when you least expect it. He can definitely help out on the run. I could really definitely see him being a star slot corner and shutting down the best NFL slot receivers. However, I believe being an outside corner would be a little bit difficult for him because of his size. I'm not saying it would be impossible, but I don't know. Like, for example, if they were playing the Falcons or DK or the Seahawks and he had to go outside and guard DK or Julio Jones or someone of that size and strength, I don't think it would be a very good matchup. But you get him against Tyreek Hill, it could be a good matchup. I'm not saying he's got the speed for Tyreek, but so more people in that direction. There are good shorter receivers in the NFL that I think this guy can cover. And I think potentially down the road he could be very good for the Raiders. And again, that was a need corner, so they got those 2 good corners. And overall, I gave their draft a C+. They drafted too many people too early. I think they failed to capitalize on a number 1 pick. Imagine if they had drafted CD or Judy which would then have gone along with Brian Edwards. So you could add 2 guys on the wideout now, and then you have Redfo at the 3 at the slot, and then you have Darren Waller at the tight end, and then Jacobs out of the backfield. Boom. Complete offense, much more dynamic, much more explosive. Who do you cover? Somebody's going to get open underneath. However, I don't know if he's that guy where the defense is going to be like, oh my God, we need to focus all our attention on him. So I think they failed in that regard with that first pick where they had their dibs on all wide receivers this draft had to offer. Tanner Muse, they took him way too early. They could have got somewhere else there, and they could have picked Muse later. But they did have 2 good picks in the 4th round. Again, Edwards and Arnett were good picks too, but due to the overdrafting and failing on that first overall pick, I had to give the Raiders a C+. I was very little impressed. However, if these guys do pan out that grade, it's way off. But they do need to pan out, and we'll see what happens. Another thing was that Lynn Bowden Jr., another overpick and not a good pick. So it was picks like that where you're scratching your head at the end of the day saying, what are they doing? Or, oh man, they failed to capitalize on that one, where that's why I had to give them a C+. So that was it for the Raiders. That's going to be their first year in Las Vegas. Should be interesting. And with that, we go to the Denver Broncos, who had a pretty decent draft. As they always do. They started, and like I mentioned earlier, they did take Jerry Jeudy with their first round 15th overall pick. He's a wide receiver from Alabama. I gave it an A. I'm just going to go straight into it. Jeudy, he's really got everything you want. He's got good height, good size, good strength, speed that it's not blazing. It's a 4.4 something, 4.49, 4.47, 4.48. I'm not sure. It's in there, but it's good enough. And he knows how to use his speed, which is the other thing. So that's very very good in that regard. Some people that are fast, they don't. It's like Marquise Goodwin. He uses his speed. So he doesn't know how to use his speed because he overruns, overcommits, and then he drops the ball. Jeudy knows how to use his speed, and it makes him seem faster than he actually is. So I think he'd be a good wideout. He's going to be a good 1-2 with Cortland Sutton. Finally, Sutton's going to get some help. Drew Lock didn't have a bad 5 games last year. 4-1, 64% completion. Did way better than Flacco did. 7.2, 7.3 touchdown interception ratio. So, and he did that with very little tools. I think Jeudy will be a big help on the outside for the Broncos, which will be good. He's a reliable weapon. And yeah, I think it's a great pick. And I think really with Jeudy, it's just a matter of time for him. And I think he'll develop nicely. So with the second pick for the Broncos, they had a round 2 overall 46th pick. And they picked KJ Hamler, wide receiver from Penn State. And I watched a few Penn State games this year. And he can be annoying to watch. And I think more so because Penn State kind of used him as a number 1. I think in the NFL, he'll not necessarily be that number 1 role. I think he'll fit into a slot role. He'll be the Denver's 3-man, which is going to be, think about it now, it's going to be dangerous. Denver's got Philip Lindsay out of the backfield. They have a tight end, and they drafted another tight end, so they got 2 weapons there, 2 big ones. They got Sutton Jeudy on the outside. I could definitely see Hamler being that guy who the defense will just sleep on. He'll get single coverage. He'll beat the single coverage. He's very fast. Very agile, very quick, and he's going to beat teams all day when they just don't pay attention to him. So I gave it an A-. It was strategically, it was a good pick. They're going to overwhelm a lot of teams now with their offense. And he could be a very effective slot receiver. Definitely big play capability with this guy. And he's also a return man. Yeah, but overall, I think he could be pretty good, especially since that number 1 role isn't going to be expected of him. He's not going to get those double teams And I think he'll definitely fly under the radar and be somebody who is very productive and very reliable for the Denver Broncos. So it fills a need. It's another dynamic pick, and it really loads up this Denver Broncos offense. Good pick, A-. The third round, 77th overall pick, they picked Michael Ojemudia, cornerback out of Iowa. In 36 games at Iowa, he had 6 interceptions, 17 pass deflections. This one was a little bit of a head scratcher for me. I gave it a C. I know corner is a need for them because they just lost Chris Harris, and they really didn't have anybody else. The no-fly zone is kind of dead in Denver. However, he's a developmental project. He's a steady corner, long arms, good size. He plays coverage well, especially on the big plays, 50-50 balls. He lacks anticipation and ball hawk ability. Only 6 interceptions in 36 games. That's like 1 every 6, so about 2 a year. And he's really not a help in the run game, so he could become decent. He's a developmental piece. It was a third-round pick. I do have to keep that into account. So they do need it. It's a need. And hopefully they could develop him. Vic Fangio, he's pretty good with the defensive guys. So, but I gave it a C. I don't think it was a very explosive pick, but it could turn into something good. So then the Broncos another third-round pick, 83rd overall, and they picked Lloyd Cushenberry, center, LSU. Gave it an A-. It is definitely a need for Denver. Their own line is pretty weak all over except for a left tackle, Garrett Boyles. He's solid. He does the job. Cushenberry is a very selfless player. He plays hard. He plays powerful. He's very hard to bull rush. Good core strength. His long arms are also very helpful for him and help him make him hard to bull rush. He mostly lacks the ability to block at the next level, so he doesn't really go beyond the line of scrimmage. And he really doesn't move well laterally. And other than that, I think he'll develop as a solid starter at the NFL level. He's selfless. He'll be good. And it's round 3 when you get somebody like that in the third round. And given the fact that it's a need, I gave it an A-. Good pick for Denver. Denver then had another third-round pick, 95th overall, and they picked McTelvin Agim, defensive line, Arkansas. In his 4 years at Arkansas, he had 31 tackles for loss and 14.5 sacks with 6 forced fumbles and 140 tackles. So not bad on the stat sheet. However, I gave it a B. Agim could be a D, defensive end, defensive tackle. I believe he played both at Arkansas. And he has the traits needed, especially to one that could become maybe a rotational 4-3. I believe Denver and Fangio runs a 3-4. I know he did when he was in San Francisco. But if they did do 4-3, even with 3-4, he could come in. Defensive linemen, they can't play the whole game 100%. So he could definitely come in off the bench. In terms of full starter beast mode potential there for him, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do that. But I think he'll be a solid enough guy where you can put him on the field and not worry about him being a weakness out there, especially off the bench. He's got good moves, good techniques at the line that help him get into the backfield. And I think he has, like I said, the potential to become an average defensive lineman. So not a bad pick. Third round, though, so it's a little bit questionable. Maybe they look too hard at the stats in that pick, but we'll see what happens. So Denver then had a fourth round, 118th overall pick, and they picked Albert. You try and say that name. I'm going to pass, save myself from embarrassment. I'm not even going to try it. So, sorry, don't want to offend him. We're going to go by Albert for him. He's a tight end from Missouri. In 3 years at Missouri, he caught 98 catches for 1,087 yards and 23 touchdowns. He's 6'5", 258, good size. Ran a 4.49, which is pretty impressive for a tight end. I believe he has the size and speed to become a very dynamic playmaker as a tight end, which, like I said, is going to help because they already have one there in Denver. So, so it could be good. They're going to have 2 tight ends now that are pretty good. I gave it an A- on the pick. Albert, he does lack good route running, but that's something that could be fixed. Blocking abilities, they're not that great. Again, that's something he'll learn, especially with his size. He'll learn how to use it. And he is definitely a red zone threat. He got the 23 touchdowns in 3 years, which is over a little bit over 7 years. So it's like 7 and then 8. So very good for him. And I believe it's a steal in the 4th round to get somebody with that kind of potential. So I gave it an A- for Albert. So then Denver had a 5th rounder, 178th overall, and they picked Justin Sternad, linebacker from Wake Forest. So in his last full year, which I believe it was his junior year because his senior year he tore his bicep, I believe. So he only had 8 games, 69 tackles in his senior year, but he had 105 in his junior year, 22.5 tackles for loss and 8 sacks, and in his final 3 years, along with 4 interceptions and 10 pass deflections. So he's kind of your outside linebacker guy. He could get into the backfield. He could drop back into coverage. And when you have an outside linebacker with potential, and then you have one of the best outside linebackers on your team in Von Miller, he's going to learn a thing or two. And he'll probably develop nicely. Again, he's already got the coverage down, which is nice to see. Vic Fangio is also a linebacker guru. He'll probably help him out. I think once he develops, he'll be good. He's a little bit slender, and he can be taken out of the play by kind of just one hard block. But again, with Von Miller, Fangio there, he could become a very good developmental piece. So I gave it an A. I think it could turn out very well for him. And again, it's 5th round now at this point. So you want to look at the guys you think you can develop, and I think they got one they believe they can. So good pick for Denver, which takes us into the 6th round, 181st pick in the draft, and they picked, nothing Muti. I'm a little embarrassed I didn't know his name. He is a hometown player for Fresno State Bulldog, but he didn't play a lot. He was plagued by injuries. He is talented. He's got size and strength. He led the combine with 44 reps on the bench. I think the next closest was 37, so he only man in the 40s for the bench. So he's got everything you want physically for a lineman to be a starter in the NFL. However, his injuries are hard to ignore. He missed a lot of time while at Fresno State. I believe he only had 1 year where he played a full season, and then other than that, he was just injury prone. Last year, I believe, he only got 3 games in. So I am surprised he didn't come back for his senior year, but I'm not surprised. Maybe he didn't want to risk it, but it could have helped to show, if he could get through a full season. And I didn't really pay attention at the beginning of this year when Fresno State played USC to see how he matched up against a little bit better talent. But I do know that our quarterback, Jorge Reyna, the worst quarterback in college football last year, in my opinion, I do know he was under pressure a lot in that game, so I'm not sure what Muti's role was in that. But he definitely has potential. Injury prone and inexperienced, though, may come to hinder him in the end. But it'll be interesting to see what Denver can do with him. I gave it a B- on the pick, and that was Nethan Muti, lineman out of Fresno State. So we'll see what happens. To close it off, they had 2 7th-round picks. And with their 252nd pick in the draft, they picked wide receiver out of Florida, Tyreek Cleveland. I gave it a C. This guy's nothing special. He had a lot of hype going into Florida as a heavily recruited man out of Houston, I believe. And if you just look at his stats, he never stuck out, never had a amazing year. He kind of, even for his size, he doesn't really use his size well. And he just kind of lacks the ability to get open and make a big play. So nothing dynamic, nothing special there. I was a little confused with the pick. But it's 7th round, and they must have thought something. But I only gave it a C, so there's nothing special for them there. With their last pick, they took, or it was the 254th pick in the draft, they took Derek Tzuka, linebacker from North Dakota State. He was... I know it's Division II, but he was an elite outside linebacker at North Dakota State. He had 29.5 sacks, and he had good coverage ability. The question, like I mentioned, is going to be can he do it against NFL level players? Again, it's linebacker. They got Fangio, Vaughn. Both, I believe, could help him. Will he be able to do it? Because he really hasn't had that kind of experience against tougher opponents. It'll be interesting to see. But he's got the pieces around him, and if he takes advantage and he's a good student, he could develop into something nice. I give it a B+. 7th round, 254th pick. And they got somebody that could develop and be a good come off the bench rotational piece. So overall, I gave the Broncos an A. It was a sharp draft from top to bottom. They improved their offense drastically. They added a lot of weapons to it. They did address their offensive line needs. They addressed and went for their cornerback problems. And they took somebody there. They had developmental pieces. So they're relying on their abilities, and it's up to them to develop those guys. But I don't think they had a lot of wasted picks, other than that second to last one with the wide receiver out of Florida. I think it was a sharp draft. They drafted well. And I think Drew Lock, because I believe they're going to go with him now moving forward, they got him a lot of weapons, and I think it could be very good for him and the Denver Broncos offense and team in general. So, good draft for Denver. That's 2 in a row for them. The last 2 years I've been really impressed with their drafting. And very good. I gave them an A for their overall grade, which brings us to the last team, the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. And they really acted like they didn't care in this draft, but let's go through it. They had the last pick in the first round, and they picked Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back out of LSU. Ran a 4.6 at the combine. He's 5'7", 207 pounds. Only 15 reps at the bench. And he's got shorter arms, which kind of limit his catch radius. His pass blocking, I realize, is poor. And his first 2 years at college football he had 155 attempts with a 4.5 yards a carry. And then, of course, when Joe Burrow has the best statistical season in a quarterback in NCAA history, his average went way up, and so did his yardage. His average went up to 6.6 yards per carry. So I question his ability, because it's not like he was a consistently solid back that you were looking at and going, man, he's good. When they were on a team like LSU that was really stacked from top to bottom, it's almost hard not to be good, because you just overwhelm a defense. You're doing so much, and there's so many pieces. It's just overwhelming. So I gave the pick a C-, because he's not a bad backfield not a bad back out of the backfield in terms of catching either, but they already have Damian Williams. Damian Williams can do everything Helaire can, and I don't believe Helaire can do everything Damian Williams can. And in my opinion, Damian Williams made a very good run at being, or he could make a very good case that he could have been Super Bowl MVP in last year's Super Bowl. He turned that game around for the Chiefs, and I just don't think this was a need for Kansas City. Their defense has struggled at times, and it's questionable that was a game they should have won. They got lucky that the 49ers have the most nervous coach in the biggest game situations in the league currently. I'll get to that in a later date and time, but I gave it a C-. It wasn't a need. It's not I don't think it's a great pick. I don't think it's a home run. I have a hard time seeing him develop as a big 3-down back in this league and somebody that could take over a game. He just doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the size, and the strength is just okay. He can't really block well. So I think they should have gone defense. Really defense, maybe something on the O-line, but their O-line is pretty good as well. So I just kind of question that. That pick. So in my opinion, it's not a need. And I don't think Hilaire's going to be first round quality. I'm also really not, unless he's a beast, I wouldn't really say this day and age you draft a running back in the first round. But they did anyways, and that's why I gave it a C-. So not a good pick in my opinion. Second round, 63rd pick overall, they picked Willie Gay Jr., linebacker, Mississippi State. This is another questionable pick. I do know it's a need, but Gay Jr. isn't quite the guy I would put all my faith in. He does have incredible speed and strength that it takes to be a good linebacker. However, he has shown that he could do just as much harm as he can good. He has been ejected for starting, in my opinion, maybe one of the best fights and officiating calls in the history of college football. I don't know if you saw it. I think it was 2 seasons ago. It was the rivalry week it's the last week when they have all the big rivalry games. It was Ole Miss versus Mississippi State, and the referee did a penalty for unsportsmanlike conduct. All players, both teams. It was hilarious. And he was a catalyst in that fight, and it was his second of the game, so he was one of the ones that got ejected from that game. And he also got in a fight with his quarterback, which kept the quarterback from Mississippi State from the bowl game. And wait a minute, I believe I said that about Bowden. 1 second. So that is my bad. For Lynn Bowden Jr., he did as well get in a fight before the bowl game. He did not punch his quarterback. That is my bad. He's got in a fight before the bowl game, which that's not good either. Ray Gay Jr. took it a step further, and he got in a fight with his own quarterback, knocked his quarterback in the face, messed up his face, and kept the quarterback from the bowl game. So that's my bad. That is a correction, and a slip up on my part. So he also tends to show a lack of effort sometimes, which that kind of makes sense. And with his other habits, he only played 5 games after being suspended for academic dishonesty as well. So it's another blemish and red card for him. And in total, he only played 28 games. In college, he averaged 3.5 tackles a game. Very inconsistent. And you question that high motor throughout the game with him. So while he could pan out, there is potential. I would say Andy Reid needs to be, one of the best life coaches to turn this guy around and get everything you want and he has in him. I'm just not sure if it's possible at this point, but we'll see. So another questionable pick, and I gave it a C+ on that one. So the next pick that they had was the 3rd round pick, 96th overall, Lucas Niang, offensive tackle, TCU. This was another pick that made little to no sense to me. The Chiefs have a right tackle, Mitchell Schwartz, Schwartz, who has been one of the best right tackles in the league the last 4 years and made an All-Pro 2 years ago. And then on the left tackle side, they have Pro Bowler Eric Fisher and decent backup Cameron Irving, who started 8 games last year for an injured Fisher. So I'm not sure what the pick was for. Niang strictly plays tackle. It's not like he's moving to guard or center. It's a very questionable pick to me. I gave it an F. It's not a need. And then let's talk about Niang now. He's not versatile. Like I said, he's only getting you tackle and specifically right tackle, which again they have one of the best in the league, and he's only 30. Schwartz is. Niang is 6'6", 315 pounds. He's got very poor speed and agility. Not good there. His weight is not distributed proportionally. And last year he tore his hip labrum and had to have surgery. And that, in my opinion, is one of those injuries you get it and you're really never quite the same. I believe he also tore his ACL, maybe not in college, but perhaps in high school, because his knee is usually it's taped in many which ways and is heavily braced. So I believe with that, the injuries, and the fact that it's not a need, I question the pick. That's why I gave it an F. And he really only brings run blocking to the table, and even his run blocking, he can't really take it to the second level, which is no good. So with that, I gave it an F. It's another bad pick for Kansas City. And that takes us into their 4th round, 138th pick, L'Jarius Sneed. He's a cornerback or safety from Louisiana Tech. Very impressively, he had 177 tackles at LA Tech, and he had 8 interceptions and 19 pass deflections in his career at Louisiana Tech. He's 6 feet, ran 4.37 at the combine, which is very impressive. I gave it an A. This team needs defense, and I think whether you put him at corner, whether you put him at safety, I think he could probably fit into both. It depends where you want to develop him. I think it's a good pick. It's a need, so they finally address a need. And I think this is one where there's really not a lot of red flags. He could definitely develop and work on his few flaws, but he already has things that you don't see in every person. He's got good intangibles, good anticipation and that, and he's got really good cover ability, and like I mentioned, ball tracking ability is superb. And it's just small fixes you're going to have to do, sharpen up a few things, and I think he could develop very nicely for the Chiefs, and that's why I gave that pick an A. It was their best pick of the draft to that point. Which takes us into their 5th round pick. First 5th round pick of the draft for them. 177th overall. Mike Dana, defensive end, Central Michigan, and then Michigan his last year. And this was another F for me. And no, it's not like I don't hate the Chiefs, in case you're wondering. And I feel like they're just wasting picks. I'm going to be honest. I watched many Michigan games last year. I'm a mild fan of the Michigan Wolverine football. And I'm going to be honest. When I looked at the list of players drafted from Michigan, which I believe it might have been more than any other college, I didn't recognize this guy's name. And I recognized everybody else's name. So it's not like I didn't know the players. I knew the players. I didn't know who this guy was. And yeah, I did not know who he was. So that's a little bit of a problem to me, especially 5th round. There's some decent, you could find some pieces to develop there. And it's not like he was dominant. He only started in 17 games in his college career. He doesn't have big playmaking ability, and he lacks a lot of the necessary skills that you need out of players to develop and have decent NFL talent. So at best, and this is an at best, he's a decent bench player. And that's a little embarrassing because, at best. So he's not even there. He might get cut. I don't know. It just seems like another waste of a pick to me from Kansas City. Definitely not a good pick. And the Chiefs had one more pick. That was their 7th round, 237th overall. Zacchaeus Keys, cornerback out of Tulane. And I gave that a C-. Overall, Keys, I'd say because of his size and the fact that it's the 7th round, he might be a good matchup. Or he might be a good developmental piece. He'll definitely be a good matchup against the taller, larger receivers. But other than that, he's not a ball hawk. He's nothing special. Average speed. So it's a developmental piece and probably somebody that could come off the bench or come in when you do 5-6 DBs. He's definitely not a starter. No, not a number 1 QB. Not even a number 2. Or not QB, my bad. CB. So he's all right, and he's a developmental piece. And overall, with the draft, this might be surprising for the grade. I only gave it a C- strictly because of the question mark next to Gay Jr. and the fact that he might be good, he might be bad. Otherwise, I would have definitely given it a D. If they just picked some bad linebacker there or if Gay had no potential, but Gay does have potential. They drafted a pretty decent corner, in my opinion, out of LA Tech. But other than that, it was horrible. Even looking at it now, they might get a D anyways, even with Gay. It was a horrible draft. It's one of the worst I've seen. It's like they didn't care. It's like they just said, well, we won the Super Bowl. We don't need to improve. And that's what they drafted like. It was horrible drafting. It's like they had no draft plan. They didn't go for needs. They didn't attack it head on. They made stupid, silly picks that I think are going to come back and get them. In the end, it was a waste of a draft, a waste of a pick. You may as well trade the picks or something, or do something, because they wasted them completely, flat out waste. And that's why they got a C-. If anything, it should have been a D or D-. It was horrible. Outside of Louisiana Tech corner and potentially Gay Jr., it was not a good draft. Elair might be a decent running back for a backup, but he's not going to develop. And other than that, they just didn't even have that many picks. So I'm just a change. It's no longer a C-. It's a D+. Simply because of the fact that Gay might develop. But other than that, they only had 2 notable picks, maybe 2.5. And it's really nothing special. So my new grade is a D+ for the Kansas City Chiefs. Absolutely horrible. So with that, we have reached the end of the AFC West draft analysis. And for a recap, we got Denver Broncos taking first place with an A. Los Angeles Chargers second place, close behind with a B+. The Las Vegas Raiders way behind at a C+. And the Chiefs with a horrible draft class with a D+. That is the AFC West draft class.